And now I would like to welcome our wonderful first speaker for today, DMITRY VINNIK. Hi, DMITRY. He is an open source developer advocate at Facebook, where he focuses on projects in the mobile space. His goal is to help developers to be more productive through open source. And today he's going to talk about stress-driven development and how to avoid it. So DMITRY, the stage is yours.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. Yes, as was being mentioned, my name is DMITRY VINNIK, and I'm a developer advocate at Facebook. I do indeed focus on mobile, in particular on projects like Fresco, Litho, and others, including React Native. And if you want to find out more, go to opensource.facebook.com. You'll find out about our very large portfolio. But let's get back to the business. Today, we'll talk about stress-driven development and how to avoid it. Okay. So what are our goals? With any talks I give, I like to start with a very specific agenda. So, you can follow along and if necessary, join later, and you know what you're gonna get away with at the end of this session. So first and foremost, I want to make sure we understand what stress is. When I say stress, I mean anything that we encounter in life that causes us to be anxious about and worried about. More importantly is practices how to deal with stress. And last but not least is, you can talk about those practices of dealing with it for ages, but how do you actually stick with those practices? And that's what I hope most of you have this takeaway from this talk, how to move forward after this presentation. All right, so in terms of stress as a whole, why should we even talk about it? That's always a good question to ask, why? And let's look externally. What the external motivation for us to even bring up this topic? The gaming, I'm not going to talk about badly about gaming industry, but gaming industry is well known for sometimes overwork. And this example from 2004 may be a good one, where at Electronic Arts at the time, there was a rush to push to release a new game. And as a result, there was a very famous letter from one of the spouses of the employees who had to work overtime, sleep under their desk. And that actually got quite a bit of traction back when Life Journal was a real thing. Another example is the company Rockstar and how people in 2010 had the same issue. And you don't have to look for these examples for long. Even 2018, someone from a company, Telltale, I really liked this tweet from Brandon where he talked about the fact that, ultimately your health and your family should be a priority, not just your work. And sometimes we forget about it. And as a result, we get ourselves in a position where stress overtakes us and burnout is a real thing, as we know. There are very many cases out there externally, but what about internally? What about your colleagues and people you work with, even remotely? What about your family? And more importantly, of course, what about you? It always starts with you. As you know, if you've ever been on a plane, they always say you have to put your breathing mask on first in case of emergency before you help your neighbor or whoever your family member. So you have to start with yourself. And just to be more personal here, I'll share my own story. In fall 2015, at the time I was working for quite a few years full-time and also studying full-time. And it was a bit overwhelming, of course, because if you do just one of those two things at once, your body can't really keep up for long if you're doing two of those, so studying and work. And in one evening, I felt something was really off. In my half of my body, like my arm went numb, then my leg went numb, and then at some point, half of my face went numb. Like I couldn't feel it whatsoever, and to the point where I had to call an emergency for getting the car and getting me into the hospital because I was young at the time and still I was worried that it might be somewhat a stroke, right? Age doesn't matter in those cases. And so I got to the hospital, and after spending 7 hours in a waiting room, Canadian hospitals, after spending that much time, basically the doctor told me it was a massive panic attack, which I've never experienced before. And after that, I really started thinking about it. It was definitely an unwanted experience. I didn't want to experience that again, but it was really beneficial for me because it became a motivation. People do need motivators to change something in their life. And for some people, it will be fear of death. And in my case, it was a real thing because the doctor said, if you're not going to change something, you end up with a real stroke, not just with a panic attack. For some, it's a sense of purpose, doing something that's bigger than themselves. It might be even their family in some cases. That really helps people to decide, change something. Religion, whether you're a religious person or not, what really matters in terms of finding motivation to change something, it's the sense of community. That's what really religion might help you with, or even if not religious, just finding people you can work with or work on your stress with, including your family. It really helps to motivate you, again, to change something for the better. So yes, let's say we found the motivation to work with our stress, to deal with it. But what's next, right? We need to identify the problem. You can't just treat the symptom without, finding out what the root cause is. Maybe the stress you felt and the stress you're feeling, it's not a bad thing, right? Not all stress is bad. And the reason why I'm saying that is because nature is smart. The only reason why we have stress in our life is because by natural selection, we ended up with an ability to even feel that, not just us, animals as well. And the purpose of stress, real purposes, it's that fight or flight response. If you are an ancient person and you're walking through the forest and you see a cheetah or some other animal that can potentially eat you, or you can eat that animal, you have to make a choice. Do you run away or not? And while you're running away, let's say you decide to run, you would be able to endure quite a bit of sleepless nights because, again, your body will manage that. And it's going to be managing that feeling because of stress, how it handles stress. It will even be able to handle hunger, not to overcome yourself and fight that huge lion, whoever you encounter. You'll be able to make a decision to indeed run away because you by yourself cannot handle it. And that all thanks to stress, be able to deal with that. So if stress makes sense, if stress is a smart thing to have, why do we feel so bad, right? And because there are two different types of stress. There is a short-term stress and there's a long-term stress. And the thing is, we have to avoid long-term stress and emphasize the short-term and get the benefit of it. Comparing, let's say, you're not sleeping enough, right? If you're not sleeping for many days at a time, it's really going to be detrimental to your health. I have an infant at home. It's been really tough. But if you have for short term, for example, you don't sleep because you have an exam or some deadline, maybe once or twice, it's not a big deal. But doing it all the time, your health's not going to be able to keep up. And so what's the conclusion? It's the fact that we should incorporate short-term stress to make our lives better and eliminate the long-term stress. So in terms of, obviously it's easier to say, and I'm sure you've seen it before, at least in some form of or way. But there's a good old trick. It's to divide and conquer. You have to divide your stressors and figure out how to deal with them. And the grounds for stress, basically places that cause us the most stress in life. There are 4 of them, at least the ones that I highlight. One is, again, sleep. It's a big part of our lives. It's nutrition. It's your fitness and your work. And let's leave work for the last, best for last. And let's begin with something that we all do, sleep. Again, I wish I were to have more sleep. And I want to reframe it. Instead of saying about, what causes stress, I want to approach it as how would we use that, the stressors as an opportunity to change something for the better. And let's call it grounds for anti-stress, places where we can change something. So let's begin with looking at sleep. And just before I go on, there's quite a few really bit of information here. And I hope that at least some of it will resonate with you and you'll take at least one of these 4, maybe all 4, and find what can be applicable to you. You don't have to take all 4 grounds for anti-stress, but at least some, I hope you'll have as a takeaway. But let's get back to the fact of sleep. Why do we sleep? That's a good question. For some people, it may be still, especially again, toddlers, they don't want to sleep. Why do we need to sleep? But the reason for sleep, it's been proven that if you don't sleep enough, you will have depression, you will have anxiety and all sorts of things because of that. So if you sleep proper, you're not going to have that, or at least going to have less of that. There's been proven research that lack of sleep causes very severe mental illnesses, and that also can be resolved by sleeping enough. It increases your creativity if you sleep sleep enough, and also it improves your memory. There is a saying in many languages that, you know, it's easier to solve a problem in the morning. Don't try to fix something in your code before going to bed. First of all, it's going to mess up your sleep altogether, but also in the morning, you are going to have a fresh head and be able to solve it. And there is a reason for that, not just because of, you know, whatever stereotypes you might have, but it indeed works physically like that. So if you still need convincing whether sleeping is important, read this great book by Matthew Walker, Why We Sleep. It will explain to you why sleeping for, you know, if you're a business owner and you think that you have to work 100 hours a week, or you like think you have idols like Elon Musk or whoever, where a person would have multiple companies to run. This book will hopefully direct you in the proper path on sleeping more. But, you know, now we know why we need to sleep, but how do we sleep properly? And the path to healthy sleep, there are quite a few. You need to make sure you control your noise and light pollution. What it means is, you know, external noises, have a white noise machine to remove them, or make sure you have curtains on your windows so you sleep in a proper dark environment. Control your environment. You can buy all of the things that I just mentioned if necessary. 8 hours uninterrupted sleep. Again, I wish I had that today, but I don't. But ideally you do. And that's something you can be thriving for. But more importantly, you know, if you can't sleep for 8 hours or whatever, still have a constant wake time. Your body gets adapted to a certain pattern, to a certain routine. And if you know, even if you don't get enough sleep, try to wake up at whatever time you wake up, even if you have nowhere to go on that day, especially nowadays because we work from home. It might be, you know, tempting to sleep longer. Have a particular wake up time. It will help. This is how I used to fly at conferences. You know, I would control everything in a plane, have a noise canceling. It's a construction grade headphones, eye mask, and special pillow. I looked kind of weird on a plane, but, you know, I was getting sleep. And there is a book by Nick Littlehales on exactly how to sleep. He's a sleeping coach for very famous sporting teams, especially in the UK. So we talked about sleep quite a bit. Let's look at nutrition. And the reason why I'm talking about it is I'm not a nutritionist or dietitian, but we all eat. And, you know, you are what you eat at the end of the day. And general nutrition practices that, even if you're, again, not a nutritionist, you can follow. Diets never work. Most diets are yo-yo diets. You might lose weight, but it will come back right at you. It might be even more. That's why it's called yo-yo. You know, that like the toy that people play with. Not just toy, actually. Some people have professionals. I know a person who is a professional yo-yo player. Experiment with your body. Experiment with your food. Right? It's all about lifestyle change. Maybe some diets do work for you. Some, you know, maybe you want to be vegetarian. Maybe you want to be carnivore. Try to, you know, see what works for you, because everyone is different. Overall, I found for myself that removing sugar or minimizing that, especially added sugar, helps significantly, and just more greens. If you struggle with greens like I did, make a green smoothie. It you know, add something sweet to it, not as much sugar, but still, and try to get more greens into your diet. All of that will help you. Just these simple 4 parts. But the key to food control is really intermittent fasting. That's again, that's been a known term for quite some time now, and that's probably the best thing that worked for me. And again, I've lost quite a bit of weight, not just because of losing weight, but because I really felt, you know, healthy in that sense. Intermittent fasting is the most common, is 16-8 model, where basically some people eat within the 8-hour window and they don't eat within 16-hour window. For example, I eat between noon and 8 p.m. And, you know, majority of time that I don't eat, I just sleep or, you know, waking up in the morning. So you don't feel as hungry, or at least you can control it better. And the reason why the fasting is great, it's the fact that you don't feel stuffed anymore. If you think about, again, our ancestors, we didn't have access to food as much as we do today. And because I end up eating at about 12, I know I'm actually hungry. I eat because I am hungry, not because I have to eat. And that feeling, that ability is really where I get with fasting. So you don't have that feeling anymore. And if anything, the more and more research been coming out around fasting is that it's probably one of the most promising in terms of longevity, like living longer. It's all been coming from the intermittent fasting research. So that's quite a popular area right now of research. If you want to know more about nutrition, I found some podcasts. Oh, sorry, I accidentally pressed on the podcast. Found a couple of podcasts useful. There is a Ben Greenfield, a very big specialist in the fitness and nutrition, Model Health Show, or Human Optimization Hour. All of those, again, if you're going for a run or you're at home, we don't commute as much anymore these days, but we might soon. So podcast quite handy in that sense. So you've probably heard of that before, of this whole nutrition stuff, but it might sound easy, but how do we actually stick to those practices I've mentioned? And the practices I'll talk about more. It's all about habits. Making a habit and the lifestyle change is the only way forward. It's not to, again, that's why diets don't work. If you just have a temporary change, you will end up losing it and dropping that. Habits are drivers for daily routines, and the same rules for habits apply to all of them. And it's all about habit loop. Habit loop consists of a simple thing: a cue or a trigger, the reason why we do something, a routine, actual thing that we do, and the reward. And if you want to, and it just keeps going. It's not very much a loop. I'm not the best drawer, but it's technically a loop. And it's all about the routine. There was a great book about habits where an example was that one lady had a very hard time, biting her nails. She's been biting them very hard to like blood, basically, the bloody fingers. It was like quite intense. So she would go to her psychiatrist about it. And the way they solved it is they identified the trigger. Her trigger was she felt pressure in her hands. That's why her routine was biting fingers, and the reward was there's no pressure anymore after biting. So what they approached is they changed the routine. She felt the pressure in her fingers, and she would sit on her fingers. So they would change the routine from biting to sitting, and the reward would be the same. Pressure would go away, but the trigger would stay the same, but the routine has changed. That's how we approach it. We don't fight it, we work with it. And, if you want to be ready for a change, I know it's quite a lot of things I've talked about. That's why the best thing to start with the Keystone Habits. Keystone Habits, it's basically something if you stick with, it will change your behavior. It's small wins, small things that you do, especially in the morning, that will have a ripple effect on your day. An example, if you wake up at the time you wanted, at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. or whatever time, or you went for a run in the morning or even in the evening. In the morning, it's best because it really has the ripple effect throughout your day. Keystone meaning it's like a very milestone-like thing. So if you change it, if you have that small thing, it will give you confidence throughout the day to be able to control yourself with food, with fitness, with whatever else you have. And the great book on Power of Habits by Charles Duhigg is really helpful in that sense. Okay, let's talk about nutrition. Let's look at fitness and get to work though. Fitness, there are two main things, not just physical, but also mental. And I'll talk about both. When it comes to physical health, again, it's all about Keystone Habits. It's about requiring variation with fitness and integrating it with your work and your life, and also about flexibility. So let's look at Keystone Habit one more time, because I want to drive it home. Fitness as a habit, you have to identify your trigger, what triggers you in terms of starting the day. Some people is preparing clothes in the morning, the day before. So if in the evening you have a running clothes, when you wake up, you don't have to think about finding your shorts, your shoes. It's all prepared for you. So that trigger is already there. Find the reward. Maybe don't eat too much after the fact that you ran quite a bit. But maybe buy yourself, I don't know, an ice cream, or go to bed again, or go to sauna. Have that reward for yourself. Establish goals. What are you trying to, improve? And find a community. It's best to run with someone. And nowadays, when there was when the coronavirus was like a quarantine stuff, gamification would really help, and even for online gamification, which what means is Strava is a great app. For instance, if I run using Strava, it shows my results online, and people who are connected with me, my followers, my friends, can give me kudos, give me thumbs up, and I feel like we're running together. Some people use like trackers, wearables, whatever. It really gamifies. It gives you that good job feeling after the fact, or 10,000 steps in some wearables that you also might know about. Variation in fitness is another important thing. You have to find the acute stressors when it comes to fitness. Things like sauna or ice bath, that kind of a short-term stress that's very rapid but not long, improves your fitness significantly. It's not just about working out. Very cardio. If you run, try to bike another day, try to use elliptical machine. Don't just do one thing. It will be also hard on your body too. Very focused. Maybe sometimes do arms, sometimes do legs, or maybe do them all together. Whatever works best for you. It's all experimental, but try to incorporate yoga as well. Yoga is a great thing. There are different types of yoga, so find whatever works for you. Try to integrate your fitness. If you have to go to a gym for fitness, you most likely will end up, not going, especially when the quarantine was happening. Try to have active commute before when we had a commute. Maybe some people will have a commute going forward. So think of that, maybe bike to work if you can. Mark in a calendar. If you, even today when we work at home, in your calendar, have those periods when you will go for a run or you maybe drink some water, have this kind of stuff in your calendar, because otherwise you will deprioritize it. Have different desks in terms of your standing desks are quite popular. Stand sometimes, sit sometimes. I sometimes lay sometimes, on my couch. I lay on my back and just, work on a computer or something. Make those changes because it will change the pressure on your body. And also have a boredom plan. What that means is the reason why in the office people would sometimes go and grab a snack, it's because they feel bored, not because they're hungry. So you will most likely have the same feeling even at home. So have some plans. So prepare like a set of carrots for yourself or some toy to play with, but don't just, go and grab a food that you don't really need. And last but not least, it's flexibility. Really have a morning routine, start the day right. Figure out how you're going to work out if you travel. Nowadays, people are starting travel in some countries, so you might have to think about it more. Body weight exercises are a great thing. We might not have access to the gym, especially on the road. I used to travel quite a bit before quarantine, and so running with my own body basically was helpful. And if you go for like sightseeing, maybe have active sightseeing, walk around in the neighborhood or the downtown. Don't just take a car. So think of that. Physical fitness is important, but I want to talk about mental fitness as well. Mental fitness is, I think, as or if not more important than physical one, though. And people sometimes use the word mindfulness in terms of mental fitness, how it helps to improve it. I also like the word. It's been overused, but still, the main thing behind it is that it helps you to clear your mind, control your emotions, embrace solitude, and more importantly, meditation helps with mindfulness overall. And let's look at all of those in particular. Clearing your mind with mindfulness, what it does is we have information overload that we should avoid. We have information dump that we also should avoid. Even this presentation you can consider kind of an overload. I'm already at the slide 84. I've talked about so much, 22 minutes at the moment. It's definitely more than enough to consume and try to understand. Try to avoid that, having too much information coming at you. Have one place that you get in your information, or at least a couple places. Don't just go on Twitter or something and just scroll and find different opinions. Find something that really works and one source of information or a couple of them, because otherwise you'll have too much to deal with. And always have a single focus. Don't try to do two things at a time. Multitasking does not work. It's been proven multitasking is, it's been a priority before. Nowadays, I see it's changing, fortunately. And there is that great book that helps you to find out, how to clear your mind a bit better. In terms of controlling your emotions, it was very beneficial for myself. Basically, this person, Josh Ashkenaz, he's very famous in the open source community. He's posted this nice picture of him enjoying sun and jumping in the water, and someone left a comment. Very nice comment, which you would not expect and under someone's simple post about them enjoying their vacation. But that's how people sometimes treat each other, especially online. And you have to always focus on the positive side. There is never a reason to be rude, especially online. Art of unsent letter is a real thing. Abraham Lincoln was famous for that. Basically, he would, when he was angry with someone, he wouldn't just rush to them and shout at them or swear at them. He would write a couple of versions of the letters, where first one would be very rough, and maybe even rude. Second would be better. Third, maybe fifth one he will send, and the other ones he would never send. You can do that with email. Just make sure you don't send it accidentally. Try to focus on people often after end of project focus on how do we make something better, right? How, when you do retrospectives, that's not always a good thing. Try to focus on your success, what went well, and just stick to that. Don't try to improve every single thing every single time. And try to give proactive feedback. We often give feedback when something goes wrong. Try to give the feedback something went well as well. And I keep pressing on the links. There's a great talk from Brett Cannon on kindness on a podcast, Changelog podcast, and also a blog post where he talks about kindness overall online and how to be more positive in that sense. Next is the controlling emotions. We talked about controlling emotions. Sorry, too many slides. Online is kind of hard. Embracing solitude. It's very, again, art of solitude or being alone is really important for us. Having those quiet moments with no music, no people around is helpful. Flow therapy for myself was amazing. It's that deprivation chamber. You're laying in a dark capsule in the water, suspended in the water, feeling nothing. Really helpful in that sense, because you get to learn about yourself and have a clear judgment going forward. Again, it's been extremely important for me, and I think it will be important for most people. And lastly, but I want to just bring up the meditation. I'm sure you've seen about it before. There's some unguided meditation, guided meditation, active one. Active one means you go for a run. It's a sort of meditation because you're being with yourself, focusing on whatever you're doing. But it's all about consistency. Whatever you do, it's all about consistency. It's a practice. And if you need help starting with meditation, there are great apps. Headspace is a nice one. Relax meditation or Calm is quite a few three big applications in that space. So check them out. And if you're still skeptical of it, there is a great book by Dan Harris, 10% Happier. He's by no means religious in that sense, or like he's not going to try to push meditation on you, but he'll share his own experience with that and how it changed his life. So try to read that if you're still skeptical of meditation altogether. And last but not least, let's talk about work and get to Q&A. In terms of work, what are the main sources of our stress? Office environment, even being at home as well, or going back to the office, our communication, distractions, and more importantly, project planning. Let's look at the office environment. That one is kind of less applicable in terms of this slide who nowadays, because people work from home, but still many people will come back to the office, I think. So as a result, this one is still important. The open office never really works well. As a result, we just end up chatting too much. Office perks, having snacks in the office or some coffee machines, it's actually office bribes. They get you to stay longer in the office and ultimately, spend your life there rather than spend it with your family or where it matters. And that's why most of the work I used to do was on a plane where there was no distractions, no Wi-Fi, nothing. I mean, I could have gotten Wi-Fi, but I never got on one. Because work is just work. Think of it as work. Don't just spend all your time on finishing that one task at work. Spend it, with your family if you can. And there is a great book about remote work. I mean, most people actually dealt with remote work, so I don't think it's as useful, but still, find whatever works for you. In terms of communication, it's very much applicable today. And synchronous communication, when you have to jump on a call, is very distracting. And I prefer asynchronous communication where, they send me a message or email, especially in different time zones. And that's how we communicate for the most part. Unless there's something urgent and we can jump on a call, I generally prefer messages. And it's not about reach time. That some companies expect you to respond instantly, always be online on Slack. So never get away from your computer. And if you get away from your computer, make sure you say that you are not at the laptop or wherever you're at the moment. You go to the bathroom, you have to message about that. It's not about reach time. It's about response time. Have that expectations. Have expectation if someone sends you email to respond within an hour, not an hour, a day, for example. That's usually what I follow. Set those expectations. Don't just assume them. Talk about them with your manager or with your team. Have that set and have names to faces. We work on remote for the most part now. Don't just have your face. Don't just have the name as avatar. Have your face there. People will feel better about it, because they won't say negative things to you if there is a real person there. At least they feel more like it. How to deal with distractions? We have more distractions at home, I would say, but still, the mobile devices are still there. Noise control, setting boundaries in terms of distractions, and getting into the zone. So let's look at all of them individually. Mobile devices, a big one. Before, my phone looked something like this. Lots of notifications, things to deal with, distractions. Now I have very clean phone. I basically have no notifications whatsoever. I arrange all my apps. I have nothing that notifies or disturbs me. Nobody can call me, unless it's a very urgent emergency. And I put my phone away. If you put your phone away longer, like far or farther than your arm length, you're not going to take it as often. That's actually been proven. In terms of noise control, again, meaningless noise helps. Maybe listen to lo-fi music is quite handy. Sound support, things like Brain FM I found useful, Spotify or My Noise, apps that help you to have some background noises. Noise cancellation with things like earplugs, earmuffs, or noise canceling headphones like, I don't know, Bose, whatever, things of that sort, help you control your noise quite a bit. And lastly, it's the library rules. Have the rules where, people have to be quiet, even at home. Asynchronous ping first. Don't just, walk to someone, especially in the office in the future, and try to approach them. Ask them first, can we talk right now? Establish those office hours when people can ask you questions, especially if you're a team that gets pinged quite often by other teams. Have the every Friday for 3 hours, come and ask questions. Otherwise, you will end up doing no work whatsoever. And discuss those rules. Don't just assume them. That's important. Communication is the key to everything. And lastly, before we wrap up, I want to talk about project planning and how that affects the stressors at work. The low-hanging fruit people think that we can all deal with and just implement, they're usually the worst. The reason why the low-hanging, for the most part, is because they're difficult to work with and implement. So just thinking that it's easy and take them on and stress about them, not going to work. Try to dog food your projects, your application. Use that. Know your space. Know your domain. That helps to remove the stress as well, because you know what to deal with. Parkinson's law says that the more time we have, the more work expense to fill up that time, to have very control, like 9 to 5, for example, or to have a 9 to 3 p.m. work. If you say I work from 9 to 5 or not from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., you're going to have more work. You're not going to end up with less work. So always have a very set range of time you're dealing with something. And Conway's law, the fact that your app will represent organizational structure. If you're disorganized, the company is disorganized, your project is going to be disorganized as well. So it all starts there. And this great book really helps with just understanding what work is all about. It doesn't have to be crazy at work. Lately, Bootcamp had some controversies, but the book is still great in that sense. And we've talked about quite a few things about sleep, nutrition, fitness, work, all that amazing stuff. But are there any gotchas? And before we, go to Q&A, I want to make sure that I give you a quick tip on how to actually use those practices that I've just talked about. A recipe for a failure really is being dogmatic. You have to do all or nothing. You have to go to the gym every day, or no, don't go to the gym at all. It's not going to work. Find what works for you. Jumping in too fast is usually a bad idea, because if you try to run a marathon without training, for example, you end up being sore and not running at all, or not exercising at all. Always slowly implement something in your life. You have to have goals. Not having those goals, it's just meaningless work, meaningless change. So think about why you're doing these changes. And important, don't fight your nature, work with it. That habit loop I showed you, the only way it would work is if you still use the same triggers, the same reward, change them, but it's the routine that you have to change. So keep that in mind. And this is another great suggestion in terms of the books I recommend people to read. If you really need help on figuring out how to approach your stressors better. All right, so it was lots of information. So who do we trust? Do you trust me? I wouldn't say so. I mean, it's all my personal experience and things that I've dealt with. Find a specialist, a real professional that works for you. Talk to that professional, especially if it comes to mental mental issues or mental concerns, talk to the person. If you're struggling with something, experiment, find what works best for you. And lastly, share your experience. Like I'm sharing with you right now, share it online. You'll find community. Community always helps. And I always like to finish my talks with call for action. Find your purpose, find your goals, why you're doing it. Maybe it's for your family, maybe for yourself. Inspire and be inspired. It's some, those books I've mentioned, it's not just for educational purposes. It also helps to inspire you too. And lastly, enjoy life. It's not all about work. It's not about those stressors. Again, it's about enjoying it. We only have one life. I mean, so find whatever works for you and enjoy that. And with that, let's go into the Q&A. Thank you so much for listening.
DMITRY, and thanks for sharing your own experience. I think it's very motivating and inspiring to hear all of that. Actually, we have a lot of questions. First one is from David. How do I know I have reached the optimum stress level and I don't need more or less?
That's a good one. It's if you think about every short-term stress, every acute stress can easily become long-term stress, right? For instance, if you go into, let's do ice bath, right? If you spend too much time in an ice bath, you'll end up with the frozen arm, frozen legs, and frostbite, and it might go to like very hard, severe medical consequences. So the most important thing is to listen to your body and find what works for you. So if some people say, if you go to sauna, you have to spend 20 minutes, only then the fat burning properties kick in. Find what works for you and slowly wrap up, increase the time, increase the temperature, do all those things. Just listen to yourself. That's why quiet time and solitude that I mentioned helps significantly with that, because you start feeling what hunger is. You start feeling what feeling you have when you run, when you even at work. If you're not enjoying the work you do, you have to talk to yourselves why you're not enjoying it. Maybe you can change something. So it's all about feeling yourself and spending some time with yourself, not just humming all that noise, all your thoughts with music and those headphones that I mentioned before, right? It's try to remove everything, go into a quiet place and think about it, or talk to someone as well, some professional, your family member. That's how you know if such stressors become, too much. So,
thank you. The next one is from Adam. He asks, every time I set up rules for myself, I can follow them for like 2 weeks or a month top. Then I skip one day and it falls apart. What do you think of that?
Yeah, that's a common thing. I mean, the reason why you go to the gym on January 2nd, yes. You'll see it quite packed, and right, and by March it's basically empty. It's a common thing. It's that's why those small wins and like the Keystone habits help so much. So, for example, in not hating yourself too much, right? I dealt with a lot of things in my life in that sense, especially with weight. And sometimes I would hate myself for skipping a workout, or I would feel like working out is the only way that controls my weight. But because I'm able to change I realize that it's a complex thing. It's not just exercising, it's not just food, it's not just my sleep, it's all together as a complex. And because I start my day by, not blaming myself for giving myself a day off, or, relying on exercising alone as the way to like improve my health, or to sleep alone as the way to improve my health. It's myself. It's everything in the integration with each other. And so, especially nowadays, because again, as I mentioned, I'm a new parent, my routine, you just throw the whole thing away. But still, I don't drop it. I know that now I can finally wake up in the morning and go for a run, and that sets my day. Or if I don't do that, I might be, washing dishes extra hard, and so it burns like some calories. But I just eat less. It's hard to answer your question really, because it's all subjective. But it's all about those small wins, even things that you prepare clothes in the evening for the morning. In not blaming yourself, really give yourself a path. It's all about ultimately very short life that we have, and the feeling of not blaming helps to avoid forcing yourself to go somewhere. Last thing I want to say, a good thing to mention, it's personal trainers. Personal trainers are great if you want to learn about training, exercising, right? But for most people, the reason why people pay personal trainers or go to the gym is because they have that force of, I spend money, I have to go. Because I don't like spending money, I spend them, I'm forced to. That I find never works. It's that external motivator that you actually can, it's not too much, $10 a month, not too much for a gym. But if you force yourself to go for a jog for free, that's a different thing altogether. So if you have that internal motivation, not external one like money spent, that will change how you deal with your habits.
Thank you. And also I really like the idea that you just said that you start small, like once a week. That's enough. And then, you can go from there. Okay.
But also, sorry, last thing, having it every day, it also might be detrimental, right? I sometimes go to the gym or go for a run every day, and I know it's bad for me as well. Or worrying about it too much. I shouldn't feel, angry at my family because I had to go to a grocery shopping and skipping gym. I wouldn't have that. Basically, being happy with yourself is what ultimately helps. Yeah.
Thank you. And another question, many of the ideas apply at individual level. How do you scale these or other ideas at team level?
That's a good question. The same as you do with, in an individual level. Still start small. So a team is a combination of individuals. So you have to work with individuals. But also it's all by example. If you're a manager, let's say I would hope this question comes from a manager of the team, but also maybe a team member. So, but let's presume it's a manager. Leading by example is usually how great teams work. And if your manager doesn't stay late, maybe the first one to leave, and not asking you to stay late or work overtime or sends you email after 6 p.m. I think in France, there's even a law against sending email past a certain time. That's what I really love, is that organizational level examples that you set for wellness and dealing with stress is very important. That's why, and some companies give you mental health day offs. If you like that high up in an organization, that might be a good thing. But I think on a lower level, it's, hopefully leaders can show you. And so that's why I really enjoy seeing that when a manager, for instance, when we all used to be in the office, a good reason why we were able to work remote is because our manager was remote and in different part of the country altogether. So people never felt bad of not going to the office, because we do feel bad. At least we did at some point, some of us. So if you can do it by example and you have that ability, do that, and that helps with the team overall.
Well, thank you so much. And we are going to share your slides with the audience so they can check out the book suggestions and the links you shared. So thank you so much. And as a thank you gift, we would like to send you and mail you this mug with your image on it, so you can start your mornings with craft. Okay, so we are going to mail this one to you.
It's like, I'm going to be kissing myself in the forehead every time I drink it. That's kind of fun.
Well, you
by the way, if
like
you have any questions, exactly. If you have any other questions, please, Twitter is probably the best place to reach me. Just DM me, send me the question there, or just message me in any other place.
Thank you so much.